Okay, good evening, everybody. This is our first webinar this year. I know a lot of you were on last year, but we have an extensive layout this year. A lot of good speakers that are coming on and everything. So we're going to start off with my own presentation this year. And let me just move this over here if I can see. So just a little bit of background and I'll get into it. But when I went to college at Round in North Jersey, I read a book by Barry Commoner, no relation to this Barry here. And I learned a lot from it. It was the 4 Laws of Ecology was one section of it. And so let me move over here. Sorry for the confusion. Get that out of the way. So I founded Tech Terra Environmental about 15 years ago, after working many years for other companies that were, very heavy on pesticide and synthetic fertilizers. And along the way, I met some good people who helped me understand that there were better ways of maintaining landscapes and with using again, just heavily reliance on pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. So, as it says here, I'm glad to take any questions as they come up, or you can hold them to the end. We have a couple people moderating, so they'll bring up any questions that you like, and I can talk to them at that time or answer you later on. And at the end there, you'll see you'll get a special discount code when you if you want to order some products or anything. So anyway, this is kind of my story. Plant a seed and you wait forever for it to germinate. And so, like I was saying before, I got my degree at Round College up in the northeast corner of New Jersey on environmental studies. And it opened a whole different thought pattern for me. And it was the first time I really heard the term sustainability. And my first thought was, well, who wants to sustain this? We got to change some things. So I want to bring this up to be clear. So I have a degree in environmental studies, but I want to be clear that ecology is different than environmentalism. Environmentalism is kind of like a political movement, good or bad, whatever. But ecology is a science, and it's a branch of biology that studies the relationship of plants and animals and their whole environment that they intersect with. And this was a book that was required reading. And that's why I call this the 4 Laws of Ecology, which is actually termed by Barry Commoner back in 1971. And the 4 laws are: everything is connected to everything else. All living organisms and the ecosphere that we live in affect each other and affects everything else. And in nature, there's no such thing as waste. Everything is used up, transformed to another substance that is again used up and recycled back throughout itself. And, in nature knows best, and basically we've come a long way where we stopped using everything that is in nature and we started making our own chemistry. And as you can see here, when that 3rd law, it says the absence of a particular substance in nature, it's a sign that it's not compatible with life. And over the past 200 years, we've been introducing a lot of substances that are not really compatible with life. And the 4th law is there's a cost of everything that we do in nature. There's always a cost and consequences. So, we live on this one planet that so far we haven't found anything like it. We are full of life. I spent a lot of time watching, on a lot of nature shows. I just watched one the other day on Nova that just showed all the interconnection going on in the ocean with the different plants and the animals, and it's just amazing. It's something that a lot of us have lost track of in today's world. So my transformations again started 15 somewhat years ago, and a couple of people influenced me the most were talking about healthy soils. Elaine Ingham, Chip Osborne, and many others were very influential to me. So again, everything is connected to everything else. This is just showing how nitrogen moves throughout the atmosphere and the soil and gets into the plants, and the plants hook up with microbes in the soil. And it's just mind-blowing. So a lot of us in the landscape industry, we focus on what's called the macro, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And yeah, they do have a big effect, but actually the top three here, oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen, they have a lot more influence on plant health and how things work and everything. And then you have the minor nutrients too. And this is a bit more of how, again, the connections with bacteria, soil bacteria, and plants. One thing down here is really important. Well, actually, we'll start up here. So bacteria degrades toxins and pollutants in the soil. It also increases the availability of nutrients to the plants, and they protect plants from a lot of pathogens. Fungi is a whole nother scope of what's going on in the soil. Fungi is really important with protecting the roots from nematodes and some other, I won't say bad, but detrimental situations going on in the soil. So fungi will coat the root hairs and everything and help transform some of the nutrients to the plant, and again, protecting the plant from diseases. So carbon is one of the main factors about life on Earth. And, a lot of it is just interaction with the atmosphere and plants and the soils and the microbes. Excuse me a second. And how in nature it's recycled and used again and again and again. Now, as you can see, we've moved far away from nature, and so we've had a big impact on our planet and the ecosystems in there. So you can see there's a lot of runoff from industrial use, home use, agriculture, and these are some of the sources again. Again, everything is connected to everything else. Nothing just disappears. Things that are good, things that are bad, they move throughout the whole system and have either positive or negative results. So going back to my analogy of the seed being germinated, like I said, those people who influenced me on different ways of taking care of landscape and properties and ball fields and things like that began to take root. So the second law is everything must go nowhere. On this planet, we live in a closed system. So, aside from, some asteroids coming in and what we lose throughout the atmosphere, mostly is stayed here, but some will escape from the atmosphere into outer space. But the big thing is, when these, what's the term I want to use? Unnatural or man-made products, they don't break down like natural products do. You know, the big waste problem we have, plastics and everything, and so many other things, they just don't break down. They accumulate in certain species. And this is a classic example back when DDT was used a lot. It did a great job on killing a lot of insects, but it would persist and concentrate its way up to the food chain, where back then when that was happening, there was a lot of calcium that was not being put into the eggs of fish-eating birds like eagles. So we were in danger of losing a lot of wildlife. DDT, on the other hand, you know, is a very good product to use, for instance, on malaria tents and everything. It's used a lot in Africa, but not sprayed all over like it was in the US back in the 50s and 60s. Carbon is also recycled, and you know, a lot of it's naturally in the atmosphere, but a lot of it comes from emissions from cars and factories and all kinds of production material. Bear with me with my voice, I'm sorry. So in the atmosphere, it gets absorbed by plants, which then their exudates from the roots go down into the soil, and those exudates leak out into the soil, and they actually attract and feed a lot of the beneficial microbes. And then they break down, and over time they become fossil fuels. And when the fuels are burned, that's when we get a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. Again, just a visual of you can see where there's carbon uptake, which is sequestered into the soil and into the waters, but we are producing more that goes into the atmosphere and causes a lot of problems up there. So another law is nature knows best, and it's continually renewing itself. But it could be difficult to understand because nature does have a lot of catastrophic events and everything. And, you know, Mount St. Helens was a good example. You had all that devastation, but in long term, this turns into this. Nature heals itself. It finds these opportunities to get new plants growing, which brings in more flora and fauna, and it renews itself. When mankind does things like that, it's not so easy to renew. So there's no such thing as a free lunch. That's the third law. And, you know, and that particular saying originated way back in Mesopotamia with I forget exactly the ancient king's name. Sorry about that, but it was brought up then. There's just no such. There's always a cost for something. So in nature, things do break down everything, but it doesn't really have a conscience. So there's either rewards or punishments, and there are consequences. And wisdom, according to Norman Cousins, is consists of the anticipation of consequences and how we react to them. So Abraham Lincoln was also used this term a lot. So I'm not really sure what he's saying here. And the last one isn't for him because there was no gasoline at the pump at that time. But by using a lot of fossil fuels, it has obviously a bad effect on the atmosphere and carbon sequestration and everything, and that affects all of us. So back around World War I, these two guys German scientists, they converted ammonia to make explosives, which are then later used for fertilizer. It's called the Hager-Bosch thing. One of the things, aside from making the bombs, but with the fertilizer, you can see that because of using those synthetic fertilizers, there was a great increase in a lot of yields of crops, which on the one hand seemed to be good. On the other hand, that's what fed a lot of the population growth. And when our population spikes like this, we're using a lot more resources than we ever had been in the past. And it's kind of coming back to bite us. So the Haber-Bosch process, like it says here, it's energy hungry. It uses up a lot of carbon in the atmosphere, which goes down into the soil, and just the energy use. I'm not going to read this to you, but it's a lot of carbon that gets put into our environment, which ends up being a problem. So here you can see the whole cycle of it. Oops. And you see a lot of leaching from fertilizers coming down, and fossil fuels. It all gets worked throughout our ecosystem. So here's a picture of the United States, and those of us who live up here in the Northeast, we've got a lot of turf area. And again, that shows more of it. But here's the key thing, the amount of resources we use to grow grass is huge. I mean, you compare the amount of water it's used for lawns with corn and alfalfa, and it's just a lot of water gets used and gets polluted and runoff, and it's an issue. Look at this. There are so many millions of acres of lawn that's irrigated than there is corn. And corn is the #1 agricultural crop. So all these resources we're using up just to get a green lawn, there's a price we pay. So again, going back to my roots, learning from Lane Ingham and Chip, I found out that most of these answers are in the soil. Instead of using all these hardcore pesticides and synthetic fertilizers, we do much better by using more natural products, that contain carbon that can be sequestered in the soil, have living microbes that help plants grow, rather than to have using so much of the synthetic nitrogen and phosphorus. Grow plants a lot healthier when you're building all the soil. The soil that helps protect the plants. Again, I apologize. So by doing this, you're increasing the soil's cation exchange. You're changing the structure of the soil. You're increasing the amount of food for living organisms, and you reduce the cost of pesticides, fertilizers, and irrigation. Steve Recke was with Rutgers. He's been with Rutgers for a long time, and he teaches IPM. When I was studying under him, he was teaching IPM for landscapes. He's since moved on to nurseries and everything, but he had a 3-day course that I really enjoyed. He talked a little bit about the difference between IPM and PHC. Integrated pest management is is a way of focusing on what type of pesticide to use on insects and when to use it to, and with certain techniques, you can use a lot less of it and be more effective. But then he went on to talk about plant health care. And to me, that was a much more effective way, because rather than concentrating on controlling insects, you're concentrating on growing healthy plants who can withstand a lot of insect issues. I'll tell you a story. After the course, Steve would spend a day with you out in the field, and I was doing a lot of IPM applications in some very nice neighborhood in Princeton, New Jersey. And we went to this one that once a month our visits were during the growing season. Knocked on the door, asked them to move their limousine away from the tulip tree because there was a lot of sooty mold on it from aphids. And so they moved the limo. Steve and I went over there, looked, and it was just loaded with aphids. And I said, well, we got to spray it. He says, let's just do an experiment. I said, don't spray it. Let them know what you're doing, and we'll come back in 2 weeks and see what's happening. So the homeowner agreed. We came back in 2 weeks. The aphids were gone. And the reason why is there was an abundance of ladybug larvae, which eat the aphids. So nature took care of that pest. We didn't spray it. We told them what we did, and they got charged for it. We weren't billing for spraying, we're billing for keeping their plants healthy, and that was the best way to do it. They were happy, we were happy, and it was much easier than soaking down an 80-foot tulip tree with pesticides. So that was a lesson I'll never forget, and I thank Steve all the time when I see him. So, what do we do from here to help change things around? And number one is improving plant health by increasing the soil biology and carbon in the soil. There are some inoculations that you can use to put into the soil that are natural, that will control a lot of the pests that are going on there. And, adding carbon to the soil is key, because that's the foundation of healthy soils. You need to have the carbon in there, which is the basis for to grow all the beneficial microbes that are in the soil. So here are key things: right plant in the right place, test your soil, reduce the applications of synthetic nitrogen, use biologically active soil amendments, and feed the biology. Mulch with organic matter, proper irrigation, increase the habitats of birds and pollinators, and learn how to choose effective pesticides that have the least amount of impact on the environment and the soil. And always keep learning. Remember, everything is connected to everything else. I always start with the atmosphere, where the plants take in things. Roots put out their exudates, which is a lot of kinds of sugars, which attracts a lot of beneficial nematodes and bacteria, fungi. I don't have it right now, but I had a great microscopic photo just looking at the nematodes here. And there was a fungi, that a strand of fungi would actually encircle the nematode and squeeze it to death and kill it. But the cool thing was, it only did that for for the pathogenic fungi, not the beneficial ones, because the beneficial ones were smaller and they could slip out. So nature's pretty cool. So, you know, where do you go from here? I mean, more and more clients are looking for landscapers who can do these eco-friendly lawn care methods. And that's why I started a new consultation service called Beyond the Soil. You know, we help our clients learn more about the soil, how to improve the biology in the soil that makes for healthy plants. And, you know, we also, excuse me, we also are suppliers of minimum risk pesticides, EPA exempt pesticides, biopesticides, so that, you know, when and if, and you will have problems with pests, but this way you can do it and treat them in such a way that it's not going to destroy the whole environment. It's going to be very specific on the type of pests that you're treating, and for the most part will not harm beneficials. So, you know, I want to thank you for tonight, taking the time to listen to. This is just the first in this series. We have so far about 9 or 10 presenters who can help you understand how to make your life easier by having products and actions that can foster healthy plants rather than just killing bugs. Make your clients a lot happier, get better results, and be more rewarding to you. So again, thank you. And this is kind of a reward. If you go to our website and you want to look at some products, use this promo code when you're checking out, and you get a $25 off. So that's all I've got to say. Any questions, comments, please let me know.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I'm going to let people unmute themselves if they want to ask a question or have a comment.
Yeah,
thanks,
please.
Barry.
I know you guys have questions.
Got questions. Dan here, how you doing? Nice to see you. Thank you for the presentation.
No, thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I drove through Princeton recently. I went out to buy an electric mower and had to go through it. What an amazing stretch of neighborhoods. Really nice.
Oh, yes. Yeah, Princeton is a nice town. Some wonderful landscapes.
You know, I found myself wondering if you use, you know, it's interesting. I'm a little farther away. I'm not actually that close to your area. And so I work a lot with one of your brethren in the organic distribution field. I guess he was a speaker for you one time. So I feel, you know, a little loyalty to him, but you know, you're doing a fantastic job, and really appreciate it. So we do a lot of organic. I find myself wondering about compost tea versus what's the product? It's Quantum.
Mm-hmm.
Quantum and Neptunes, and you know, you talk about putting microbes in and feeding them. Do you use a lab produced set of probiotics for plant health, or what do you got going there?
Yeah, there's a couple of labs. The Soil Food Web lab. You can send them soil samples, and they'll give you an analysis. And, you know, talking about what you know, how much, not just organic matter, but the ratio to bacteria and fungi. That's a good way to do it. You know, honestly, a lot of people don't get that in depth in it. You know, it's really a matter of making the soils more productive as far as making the environment and the soil more healthy for microbes, beneficial bacteria and fungi. And there's a lot of products that do actually contain them along with the food for them to get them started.
Do you
So,
consider the food to get probiotics started a prebiotic?
I'm not 100% clear on the definitions of those. So
Okay.
when I say food, it can be, I guess, termed either pre or probiotic, but it's, you know, it's a source for the microbes to feed on. And then you can also, there's a lot of formulations that have the microbes themselves that you can use.
Yeah, I think the suggestion was give it organic matter and you're going to get some good results. I did talk to a organics distributor in Connecticut, and I asked him about buying bottles of microbial solution to introduce into soil. And he said, no, he said, microbes are like birds. They're out there. If you want a birdhouse, build a birdhouse. If you want microbes, just balance the
Sure.
the carbon and oxygen, and you're going to get some microbes moving in.
Yeah, yeah. Build a house and feed them.
Yeah,
For sure. Now I'm in South Jersey, and we only have typically in native soils down here is only 3% organic matter, which is low. But there's, I've been here, just using my yard as an example. I've been here 15 years, and it's gone from 3% to 10%.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Now, on the Morgan method, that would be considered very high, right? Huh.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't done much in the practice with the is it called soil food web kind of analysis, like the really extensive profiling of the soil?
Yeah, it certainly can be, but it gives you a recipe to follow rather than just shooting in the dark. 15 years ago, it was kind of a rage to make your own compost tea. A lot of people found out that it's not that easy to do correctly, and they were just spraying brown water that did or did not do so much good. But on the other hand, I know quite a few people who've been very successful in brewing their own tea and applying it correctly. But I forget where the saying comes from, but if you feed it, they will come. If you put the food source in there, they will come, because there's always microbes in the soil. And if you make a nice house and feed them well, they're going to multiply.
I remember a guy who was teaching for NOFA a little bit, Mike
do?
Kolinek.
Oh yeah.
Lincoln Landscaping.
Yeah, good friend of mine.
He talked about how well he did with organic methods and sports fields.
Yes.
And he talked about molasses.
Yep.
Is that what you refer to? Is that one form of feeding microbes that you're referring to?
Yes, it is. And I'll tell you a story about Mike. He's a good friend of mine. When I first got into this, I was able to get Chip Osborne down here and do a 1 or 2 day course. And he did that for several years in a row. The first time, I guess I had about 50 people there, and Mike was sitting in the front row, and I didn't know him, I hadn't met him. I went up at the end of the time, at the end of Chip's course, and I said, "So what do you think?" He goes, "Damn it, I'm going 100% organic right now." Like, whoa, whoa. Hold on, it's a process and everything. Well, when Mike says he's going to do something, he does it. And he's been extremely successful. He's treating all kinds of sports turf schools throughout North Jersey and everything. And he's just a great guy.
That's great. Yeah, we need, I mean, he really needs to be there for so many now who are, you know, poisoning their sports fields or trying to replace them with turf. That's a whole nother big thing to avoid, actually, for the environment.
Yeah.
Artificial turf.
Yep.
So he's a good one to remember, and hopefully the advocacy folks who are trying to keep on the right course can attract him somehow to be a reference and to provide some coaching.
Yeah, well, you know, the biggest thing is that there aren't enough people like Mike and Chip and some other people. You know, it's really hard to convince people that what they've been taught for years, and you know, I mean, they do get good results, but you know, at what cost to the environment and to health. So, but there's more and more people coming on board.
Yeah, well, thanks. Tonight was a step in the right direction, man. Good job. Thank you.
Well, good. I hope you join us for some of the other ones.
I've got a question for Dan and maybe for the rest of the gang here too. Would compost tea, would you want to hear a speaker come in and talk about compost tea equipment? And Barry, do you have somebody lined up to do that?
I do. It would be Mike Colma.
Oh, oh, that's great. Yeah, I would enjoy that.
Stay tuned. You know, I just will say that, you know, compost tea is a good thing. It's not the end all and be all. You know, there's cultural methods involved. There's all kinds of things. So it's you know, it's not a one-step process to really be successful at getting good results.
Yeah, I guess that's the, you know, I'm aware of the product called Quantum, which many people swear by. It's lab produced, you know, it's a small spectrum of probiotics, but it's produced in a lab, and at least while the bottle's sealed, it's somewhat predictable and vital.
Right.
And it starts to degrade as soon as you open the bottle and introduce oxygen. But I mean, if in fact it's a good sweet, it just seems like a nice alternative to doing compost teas, because I understand they're really difficult to manage and predict, you know, predict the outcomes. And then you have to apply them at the right time. So you only get what, 24 hours or something with that. But
yeah,
so,
if that, yeah. So it's and that's, you know, so you're stating some of the reasons why so many people tried it and wasn't that successful for them, and you know, like I said, it went through a fad period, and for a lot of people trying to do it themselves, they just didn't do it well and didn't get their good results. But yeah, Quantum is you know, one of the products we supply. There's a couple others we that are similar to it that, you know, contain the microbes and food source for them. Yeah.
Do you, Barry, do you happen to have someone coming from Quantum to speak, or from one of the other products, biologic products?
Yeah, I couldn't have somebody speak about Quantum. Yeah.
Sweet. Personally, I'd love to hear a speaker come on to talk about biological assays and testing.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do that. Like I said, it seems to be people are flocking to talk about this, so that's on my list to have someone do that too. Any more questions? Okay. Well, next week our speaker is Ryan Anderson, and he is the I just got to read you his bio here. Ryan's the Sustainable Communities Manager for the IPM Institute of North America. This is in the Midwest, and this group helps to train landscapers and school grounds and stuff on how to take sustainable landscaping that reduces the harmful runoff, protects the health of most citizens, and reduces negative impacts of pesticides on non-target species such as pollinators. So Ryan is a wealth of information, and I hope you guys come back next week for him. That would be March 7th.
Sounds good, Barry. You ready to end things tonight?
I think so, unless there's more questions.